Chapter 1. What is dark psychology? Dark psychology is the phenomenon by which individuals use strategies of inspiration, influence, control, and intimidation to get what they need. Dark psychology is the examination of the human conditions to check how they get motivated and move after others and thus commits different criminal activities. All of the humankind can potentially victimize other people. While many limits or suppress this tendency, some follow up on these impulses. Those thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and subjective processing systems are discussed in dark psychology that leads to savage conduct that is contradictory to present understandings of human behavior. Dark psychology says that 99.99% of the time there is a purpose behind criminal acts and harsh modes. Dark psychology hypothesizes there is an area inside the human mind that empowers a few people to submit dreadful acts without reason. Dark psychology says that all humanity can execute the pernicious plan towards others, extending from being obtrusive and changeable states to pure psychopathic behavior with no durable rationality. This is known as the dark continuum. Relieving factors that enable individuals to attract towards someone else and move towards the dark singularity, and where an individual's hurtful activities fall on the dark continuum, is the thing that dark psychology calls dark factor. A concise introduction to these ideas is discussed below. Dull psychology discusses every aspect that makes or builds up our evil and dark side. All humans are made with some of the darker sides inside them. No one can claim that he or she is pure of any evil side. Some people think of this side as criminal, immoral, and pathological. The fact is, some tend to show their darker side while some do not have that caliber. Dark psychology presents a third philosophical development that sees these practices not quite the same as religious dogmas and contemporary sociology hypotheses. Dark psychology suggests that some individuals commit these acts, and they do not do because of power, cash, sex, or some other known reason. They commit these awful acts without an objective. Some people damage and harm others for satisfying themselves. Dark psychology tends to reside itself where someone hurt others without any clarification, objective, and cause. Dark psychology claims that we all have an innate ability to copy the behaviors of others. This ability precedes our emotions, thoughts, and perceptions. We have our emotions and feelings, so we act rudely in one or another. We all have innate thinking of hurting others without any cause and being unkind to others. In reality, we perceive ourselves as a kind and humble creature. We all have such emotions and thoughts, but sometimes we are not ready to accept them. Dark psychology presents some individuals who have these similar ideas, emotions, and perceptions, and they don't hesitate and pursue their plans. The main difference is some action on their projects, but others have those feelings for a short interval of time, and they disappear after that, leaving no intent of doing such a thing. The part that triggers our predatory behavior is analyzed in the phenomenon of dark psychology. Lack of apparent rational impulse, wholeness, loss of predictability, and perception are remarkable characteristics of the behavioral. Dark psychology understands this given human condition is modified or expansion of evolution. First, we need to think that we evolved from some animals, and we are the best of all animals. Now assume that being best beings do not make us detached from our animal senses and predatory nature. Considering it right, if you contribute to evolution, then you think that all manners and behaviors relate to three primary instincts. Sex, aggression, and intelligence are the three fundamental human drives. Survival of the fittest and changing of the characters are key principles of the evolution. The thing that makes us best among all is our control over our thinking and perceptions. Universally, males fight till their death with immense power. This is the ritual of human societies. All actions, violence, and brutality explain a certain evolution. We tend to see that while animals hunting, they often chase and kill the weakest of the crowd. The purpose of this action is to lessen the probability of their death. The animal world behaves in that manner. In this study of dark psychology, we will learn about the application of it on the species present on Earth. Dark psychology discusses that portion of the human psyche, or general human condition that permits for the predatory behavior. The great writers have tried their best to discuss this phenomenon. There are only humans that can cause harm to others without any cause or purpose. Dark psychology believes there is a part of the human which feeds vicious and wicked behaviors. According to dark psychology, the dark side of humans is unpredictable. Some people torture, rape, murder, and violate without any cause or purpose. Dark psychology talks to these activities of a man as a predator hunting prey without any reason. We humans are strangely dangerous to ourselves and even to other living creatures. The more reader can imagine dark psychology, the better set up they become to decrease their odds of exploitation by human predators. Before continuing, it is important to have an awareness of dark psychology. The following are 6 principles essential to understanding the dark psychology. 1. Dark psychology is a general part of the human condition and has its impact from the beginning. All societies, social orders, and the individuals who live in them keep up this aspect of human health. The most kind-hearted individuals known have this field of evil, however, they never followed it, and have lower frequencies of rough ideas and emotions. 2. Dark psychology is the examination of the human condition as it correlates with people groups' thoughts, emotions, and perceptions identified with this natural potential to hurt others without any cause. Given that all manner is purposive and goal-oriented, dark psychology suggests that lesser the person stay in the dark hole of evilness, the fewer chances there are for their purpose of inspiration. 3. There are a lot of historical instances where we can see unusual and dangerous activities. Currently, we can characterize a psychopath as a predator without regrets. Dark psychology says that there is a continuum of seriousness extending from ideas and emotions of destruction to extreme exploitation without reason. 4. Dark psychology is considered as a wide scope of brutality. An honest description would analyze Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. Both were extreme mental cases and horrifying in their activities. The thing that matters is Dahmer committed his murders for his odd requirement for friendship while Ted Bundy killed, out of pure psychopathic evilness. Both are higher on the dark continuum, yet one, Jeffrey Dahmer, can be better comprehended as he wanted to be loved. 5. Dark psychology presumes all individuals have a potential for cruelty. This potential is inborn in all people, and different inner and outside components increase the likelihood of this possibility to show uncertainly. These practices are ruthless and occur occasionally. Dark psychology is exclusively a human phenomenon and shared by no other living being. Violence and brutality may exist in other living beings, yet humans are the main kinds that can do without reason. 6. A comprehension of the unknown triggers of dark psychology would better empower society to perceive, analyze, and reduce the danger in its impact. Learning the ideas of dark psychology tells about its advantages as well. Besides, knowing the fundamentals of dark psychology accommodates our unique developmental reason for attempting to stay. We were likely to teach others by expanding their awareness, making a change in their existence to improve things, and inspiring them to instruct others to try to figure out how to reduce the possibility of being the victim of these evil forces, and how dark psychology help with this. We all have our dark sides being the part of the human condition, yet not known lately. As this author has recently mentioned, dark psychology incorporates all types of brutal and violent behaviors. This writer tries to look at dark psychology's starting point in nature to see how the healthy, intelligent individual can end up in the news, having an outrage behavior nobody could have expected. It is astonishing how people with good mental health might take an interest in, or permit such violence. Great outrages are clear from history. There are enormous examples including destruction happened during World War II. As represented above, dark psychology is actual and alive, which requires a genuine discussion. As you keep on investigating the principles and establishment of dark psychology, a psychological structure of understanding will gradually create. Dark continuum. The dark continuum is a significant component to understand the dark section of humanity. The dark continuum is a hypothetical logical line, or concentric circles that all corrupt criminals and sadist behavior lie. The dark continuum incorporates thoughts, emotions, observations, and activities experienced or potentially dedicated by people. The continuum ranges from purposeful to purposeless. Mental appearances of dark psychology lie to one side of the continuum, and they are as harmful as physical acts. The dark continuum isn't a scale of seriousness but ranges from poor to more terrible. When this author further grows his theory of the dark continuum, you will have a reasonable represented line describing all types of dark psychology running from purposeful to purposeless. Dark factor. The dark factor is characterized as the part that is there in our personality as a core part of the human condition. This idea is very conceptual that it is difficult to understand in words. As per an online dictionary, a factor is whatever contributes causally to an outcome, i.e., various elements determine the result. This author will try to extrapolate for you in a consistent tone how dark factor takes after a condition. The dark factor is an exact condition, however, a hypothetical one. The dark factor is something a person encounters, which builds the possibility of engaging in violent conduct. Even though exploration has proposed that youngsters who experience childhood in an abusive family become abusers themselves, this doesn't mean every mishandled kid develops to become violent. It is just a single aspect of a large number of experiences and conditions that add to the dark factor. The quantity of components that are associated with the dark factor condition is enormous. It isn't the number of parts making dark factor outrageous. It is the effect that encounters an individual's emotional processing that makes the dark factor dangerous. A portion of these aspects incorporates hereditary qualities, relational characteristics, psychological insight, peer acceptance, sensitive treatment, and developmental accomplishments and experiences. Chapter 2. Dark Psychology Advantages and Disadvantages. The dark psychology comes with advantages and disadvantages together. These are the two sides of the same coin. There is nothing in the world that comes out only with advantages. The same goes for the disadvantages, that there is nothing in the world that only comes with disadvantages. It is always good and bad in the situation. The same goes for the dark psychology, that there are some advantages and disadvantages to it. That is discussed below. Advantages of dark psychology. There is no more fear. People have a side of themselves that they fear. They don't want it to come in front of anybody. People take their dark side as a weakness because they fear the outcomes. Sometimes they also feel that it might overpower their personality. That's why they have issues of trust in themselves. As a result, they put themselves down a lot of time. The dark side is not that dark as one thinks. It helps people to explore their weaknesses and the dark side of their personality. Once they get the hold of a dark side, they don't fear anything. Then, there is no more desire of approval seeking. Once it is out in front of the world, nothing is stopping you from achieving anything. They are good convincers. The darker psychology side is very good at manipulating. They need to be great convincers. They need to know where to trigger a person and how to do it. Sometimes people standing for election in school and high school or general elections need to be great at convincing to get the votes. People whose dark side is a little more superior, they can use a plus point and convince people to vote for them. It helps them achieve what they want, but not in a bad manner until they are not destroying anybody. Sometimes fighting for their position turns out to be fine if they are doing it in a boundary. It gives people good convincing powers. It helps them take risk. There is nothing wrong with taking the risk if it is not having any bad result. A lot of people don't do a lot of things that they wanted just because they are scared of the outcome, especially when it comes to having fun. They experience everything in life, so the advantages of dark psychology are that since they don't say anything, they overcome their fear easily, and they probably live life to its fullest. It takes everything to do the following at the right moment, so sometimes their impulsiveness helps them have more fun as compared to the people who keep on thinking about the outcomes. It makes them grow. The self-focus is not bad until it is not having any serious issue. Self-focus is very important for personal growth and personal maturity. Sometimes it helps people to focus on themselves completely and have them understand what they want in life to grow and to be a better person. It is something that helps a person to be a better person. It brings out enthusiasm. People with the opposite side of it are known as narcissists, and they are great at selling themselves. Similarly, they are great enthusiastic people because they try to be happier in situations that bring out the best results in the end. Enthusiasm. You need to be full of energy ball for your ambitions. Enthusiasm for work is important for people. Great enthusiastic people know what they have to do in certain situations, so they are good people to work within a group. They are very precise. One of the dark psychology personality characteristics is that these people are very precise and careful. They always want to achieve much better than them. They are always looking out to work better and nice to make everything better. They are also known as perfectionists, so the probability of them making mistakes is very low. They are always trying to do something better, something that could be more appealing. This type of person is great when it comes to achieving goals because they know what they want. They are so precious in doing everything, and it helps them succeed in life. Disadvantages of dark psychology. They become paranoid. It undermines people in stressful circumstances and makes a person paranoid. Dark psychology mainly refers to the dark side, which causes a person to feel threatened in a lot of ways. They always keep on thinking that people are planning or working against them even though there is no truthfulness. They keep on making situations in their head that don't exist in the first place. It happens a lot of time to a person, and sometimes people are also aware of the fact that it does not have any real basis, but still, they cannot stop themselves from feeling the fear. It can get more severe and sometimes turns out to be a mental health condition, but the darker side of the person just makes up something that whatever is happening has the motive against them, or it is a threat to them. The feeling that there is something that is actively trying to harm them when there is no search proves. Even if something is happening in reality, and it is happening in a positive and better way, some people think that there is something in it that is not right. They bring out the negative and positive aspects together, and later it costs them. It is the dark psychology of the person at the darker side of the person who is suppressing the positive side, and no matter how much a person wants to stop, they can't stop. They keep on building situations and thoughts. Time to time, it is not linked to anything. It is a waste. It doesn't have any benefits. They turn into a harmful manipulator. One of the things about dark psychology is that the people are great manipulators. Two different things are convincing, and manipulation is two different things. Convincing is a good trait, whereas manipulative people are the masters of deception. Manipulative people are not interested in any other benefits of any other damages. They only want to gain control, and they want people to be unwillingly supportive in their plans. They have a lot of manipulative traits to trigger people. Whatever they say is hardly recognizable. It confuses a person to this extent that makes a person feel that they are crazy. They alter the truth in such a way, and they think lying would serve them in the end. They play the victim role. People having a dark side or dark psychology and good in manipulating. They tend to play victim even if they are guilty and the situation would make the other person feel that everything that happens was their fault where they are not responsible. For manipulating and making situations in such a way that they turn into a victim. They would go to any extent to attest that they have nothing to do with the situation. They are really in that zone no matter what happens. They are so good with the alteration of words that nobody even questions them in the situation. They are masters when it comes to playing the victim role. They will play the victim role to clear the situations. They will play the victim card to get out of the situation. They won't care about how and what it costs to people out on the other side. They don't want to be jammed in a place that can be harmful to themselves. No matter if they are turning parasites on others. They only look for the good in themselves and no one else. They only want betterment in every situation and don't spare anyone when it comes to this. They are not sincere. People having a dark side of the mind are really good manipulators. They are not sincere to anybody because they can put anyone down. Anybody who comes into their space is a threat to them. They love watching others going down, and they are willing to do anything bad. They would lie in almost anywhere, and they would give the appearance of weakness because if it suits current needs, they will do whatever it would take. They would elaborate on situations in such a way that it would look so effective. People having dark psychology perceive that it can harm anybody and their surroundings. Their life is so tamed that they are not loyal to anybody. They are not sincere. Sincerity is all the best thing a person can hold. They are not only lying to themselves, but they are also lying to every other person around them. They are not a truthful friend to be with. They are not faithful. They would do anything to make them dominating and greater no matter if the person they are harming is their blood relation. They don't see relationships are close enough. No matter what outcome it would bring later on. It often looks like they are hypocrite. They are not truthful to anybody and themselves. They keep on lying about situations. They are playing with other people's minds that they sometimes forget what they are doing and what reaction would lead to the end. They often show people what they are called like they are not their real selves. Being genuine is about being true to yourself and people surrounding you in every situation of life, which is why life has a set of events, and it seems to be the most trivial of occurrences. To approach life successfully, it is necessary to make the decisions that will divide the best that are the best outcome and at any given moment. A person has to be truthful and from to the best of their personalities, and their need to be authentic. Every person is fake while going on the best things about our scenarios, and they think that it is necessary to be true to themselves. They know that they don't settle for less. They try to be a wannabe in these situations. They put on a mask on a face to hide the real personality, because the dark triad of a mind that is overlapping is a genuine and truthful personality. They can get extremely aggressive. They have difficulty in controlling their emotions no matter how much they try. They always come up with the reaction to situations, and anything that is caused because of their darker side damages their professional reputation. It is also a threat to their productivity, and eventually, they end up losing everything. In normal circumstances, it is very easy to maintain calm and composed, but sometimes when things get out of hand, and other impulsive reactions trigger people to get aggressive because they can't control the words and the actions and whatever they are doing. They feel that they have complete freedom of how they want to react to certain situations, but that is not the truth. The reaction should come up with responsibilities. They should know that no matter what they are doing, they should never cross the limits, but sometimes, because of their aggressive behavior towards people and things, they forget their boundaries. That's why many people fear the darker side. They don't want to expose it to others. They can be so sweet that it leaves a person in trauma to understand what they want because they are following a person to them and insecurities, and this also makes some very differences because of that they often lose the people they love. They can be very selfish and vicious whenever someone frames themselves from personal attacking and criticism, and there are dozens of pursuing ways of thinking that they can get whatever they want. They bully and threaten other people, and they won't let it stop until they destroy other people's mental peace. They can put people down to feel better. When people are on the darker side of the mind of psychology, on the darker side of the mind, they don't care about what other people would think. What they think is only about everything that would benefit them, would make them feel better, that makes them stand out in certain situations. They don't care that their actions will harm other people, and they are so much into the manipulation that when they talk with traits of their personality, it looks vicious. They would do anything to make other people feel down in front of them, which they do out of pleasure in doing so. At that moment, they are in a subconscious state of mind. The feeling that it is nothing wrong until it is benefiting themselves, however, it is not only destroying their personality, and is also destroying the other person's life. They don't take charge of it either, that is why it is bad. A person on a darker side knows that if it comes out, it can harm people. It is very destructive to make other people fear a certain person, to feel insecure, and feel not safe around a certain person, and in the end as a result of persons left lonely, and they don't have anybody else except regrets. It makes them antisocial. The state of mind is so wicked, and it makes the person antisocial. The antisocial person is not a person who hates to go out and mingle with people, because being an introvert and being an antisocial person are two different things. When a person says that they are antisocial, they are mistakenly known as the people who don't like to be around others, whereas in this context, it is the opposite of prosocial. This is that the antisocial person is very actively harmful towards others than if they are present in certain situations. They can cause harm to the person. They are so self-centered on the surface that they are a threat to others, and they lack empathy, and it is also combined with impulsiveness. The mix of impulsiveness and lack of empathy makes them harmful to others, because they would do what they want to do at the moment. They would not think twice before doing so. This is one of the most dark side of the dark psychology that is better if it doesn't come out. That is why they set the people who are going through this need therapy, because otherwise, they can be a threat to themselves and society. When they do this, they don't think, and they don't have any motive sometimes too, because they think that it is quite normal. However, harming other people is not normal, especially when you find comfort in doing so. However, people might think that these types of people are better if they stay at home. However, it was just causing them and provoke them to harm themselves, so they should get therapies to help themselves and others in a better manner. They have no set of boundaries. Every person has certain measures in their life. They have certain limitations, and they know that they can't cross the limitations, because if they do, it will cause harm to them and others. They don't want to be a rebel for discomfort for people around them, but when people are so manipulative, and they can easily hypnotize others, and they're in the dark psychology side, they have no boundaries, because in their eyes whatever they are doing is right, and they don't take responsibility for every action. They don't think of a backup plan. They don't think of what it can cause and why and what can cause other people, because, at that moment, if they are thinking of it, that if they want to do certain things, they will do it. They would do anything to achieve their goals, whether it would take intimidation, persuasion, force, or seduction, whatever it would take, they would do it just because they think that there are no boundaries. If they won't do a certain activity, they want to achieve a certain goal, which is very wrong. Which might be very thrilling and exciting for them, because people with the dark psychology of mind need a lot of thrill in their life because they think that they have a lot of higher self-esteem than others. However, it is a quality of a coward who doesn't set boundaries of their actions, and sometimes they are very successful in doing so, but then it leads to difficulties when there are long-standing relationships. They have very little regard for what others would feel in this way. They are self-centered. Self-centered is also known as narcissism, and when a person wants to be the center of attention, they would do anything to gain attention and make sure that they are the star of everything. They will take any opportunity to do something big of themselves to others that is so enhanced and so fake. They don't care about how it would generally affect a place or a certain group of people. They don't like to be ignored because they are so much into themselves that the fact that they might lose the attention they want. They may not be a center of attention somewhere whatever they are doing over there. They get so compulsive about their behavior and so upset about themselves that nearly is destroying everything. There is a chance that everything around them starts to fade away, and when people try showing them their places, they are not good at taking it. They don't like criticism when exposed to them because, according to them, they feel like they're perfectionist and nothing can go wrong. They are not responsible. They avoid responsibilities for their own. They find out, and then after a matter happens, they blame others for the cause. It's not that they don't understand what the responsibility is they do, but they just don't want to take the whole control, and they don't think that there is anything wrong if they are not taking charge or responsibility of their actions or any other thing. In general, they would force others to take their responsibilities, and they would not give any regard to their responsibilities. They would take responsibility so they can satisfy their own needs, and they turn into a parasite and host it to other people. Then they leave no room for other people to fulfill their responsibilities because they are so busy making others to do so. They are confined in making themselves happy. They lack understanding. People crowd themselves in a space that is physically, emotionally, and spiritually of no concern to them. They highly care about what they want instead of thinking that they are turning into a parasite in human form and the natural world. This is said to be acceptable in a relationship. However, feeding at someone's expense and mental peace is very exhausting and weakening and is also demeaning. Not only are they not taking charge of themselves, but they are also destroying the other person in every possible way. So nobody wants a parasite in their life no matter how hard it is to get rid of it. People can't get rid of it. So these types of people are so vulnerable that people find it easier to leave them because they are so toxic that nobody wants to be around them. They prey on conscientious, they prey on personal sensibilities and emotional sensitivity because they know that they have a great chance of getting somebody into a relationship by manipulating them and making them feel like they are very kind and very caring. They are trained in such a way, and that causes other people to get into the governors and kindness first, and then slowly for how wonderful they are, but after the time passes they face and judge that these qualities minimize because the person feels is that they are only being used of service by somebody because they don't care about anything. They just only care about what is being given to them, and their criteria are always given and never give and take. This personality is very self-centered, and they are very emotionless. Chapter 3. Dark Psychology, How to Analyze People. When you are learning to analyze people, the responsibility is to understand people, what they state, yet what their identity is. Understanding verbal and non-verbal signals, you need to see past their veils into the genuine person. Reason alone won't disclose to you the entire story about them. You should surrender on other essential data so you can figure out how to read the significant non-verbal natural signs that individuals speak. To do this, you should likewise be eager to give up any previously established capabilities or psychological weight, for example, old feelings of hatred or personality conflicts that prevent you from seeing somebody. The key is to stay objective and get data impartially without damaging it. Regardless, you're reading your leader, colleague, or assistant to comprehend individuals precisely, you should give up options. A few dividers must descend. As great the vision may be, you must be happy to abandon old, restricting thoughts. Individuals who read others well are prepared to understand the hidden. They've figured out how to use their super senses to look farther than where you are. Analyzing people's behavior and reading body language. One of the major components of pulling off dark psychology's tactics of persuasion and manipulation is to understand the person that you want to manipulate by analyzing their behavior. In other words, you should be able to read their body language. According to science, about 20% of communication between people is through spoken words. What about the other 80% then? That is all body language. What is body language? It is the frequency that allows you to read other people like an open book. Google defines body language as the conscious and unconscious movements and postures by which attitudes and feelings are communicated. Though this definition caters to both conscious and unconscious, it is safe to say that most people are not consciously aware of their behaviors. Without realizing it, every person on this planet is broadcasting a signal. If you can learn to tune into that signal's frequency and pay attention to tiny details put forth, not only can you understand the other person and their behaviors, but also manipulate them if you wish. If you learn how to analyze each person's signal, besides being able to see what is unseen by most, even the person themselves, you will be able to understand what exactly it is that they are thinking. You will be able to read minds and then, if you want, even change them. That is exactly how people use dark psychology. Now the question is, how do you analyze people's behavior and read minds? I have already mentioned that you have to tap into some frequency, in other words, see their movements and postures and, as some professional psychologists put it, their tells, but how does it all add up together? Well, it has already been established that the mind and the body are mirrors of each other and are directly linked. Whatever someone is thinking or feeling, their body will broadcast it one way or another. All you have to do is interlink your intuition with your intellectual capacity, i.e., your comprehension. An FBI agent from America, when interviewed, said that one does not have to be a top-notch interrogator to be able to figure out what it is that is going inside someone's head, and she even shared her top 9 secrets into reading people. Figure out the baseline personality. Look for deviations from that baseline. Notice clusters of behavioral aberrations. Compare the deviations from the baseline. Understand whether or not actions are reciprocated. Identify the strong voice. Observe people's walk. Recognize the kind of words they use to describe actions, and understand what their personality clues are. Now, let's get into the specifics of these. Every day, people display some random odd behaviors. When these behaviors come to light, you realize that yes, something is off, but you do not know what exactly or why. The realization is your intuition telling you that something weird is happening, the gut feeling you have now and then. Comprehension comes into play when you want to figure out what and why your intuition is telling you so. Let us take an example. There is a boy who snuck out of his house one night to go to a party with his friends. The very next morning, his mother asks him why he hadn't slept, considering she heard a little bit of commotion at night when she woke up to pray. Around that time, the boy was sneaking back into the house after the party, but of course, he could not tell his mother that. So, he told her that he was up studying all night for a test. While telling this lie, the boy scratched his head. At face value, this behavior might just seem like the boy has an itch, but depending on the context of this situation, it can also show that the boy is dishonest, that is, he is trying to deceive his mother. It is because of these small gestures that parents can expertly figure out when you are lying to them. They know your baseline behavior. Baseline behavior is the one that is steady in form and the standard. This makes it easier to spot any tiny changes in the way you act or respond. So, if you ever deviate from your baseline behavior, their intuition tells them that something is not right, and hence they realize that you are lying. This is not just true for finding out when someone is lying, but for multiple other scenarios as well. For example, a girl raises her left eyebrow constantly when she is feeling angry, or a boy sniffs his nose often when he is feeling nervous. From the face value, it may look like the boy has gotten a cold or runny nose, but the truth is that this tiny gesture depicts that the boy is nervous. So, one way to read body language is to constantly observe someone until you figure out how they behave under different conditions. Another way to understand people's behaviors in a situation, or people themselves, is through their tone of voice. When you come across a group of people, notice the one with the strongest voice. That person has the personality of a strong person. Some voices will be soft, some will be loud, but only one will be strong and firm as compared to the other voices. It is important to distinguish between the strongest voice and loudest voice. Just because someone is loud, does not mean they are the leader of the group. The leader can have a soft-spoken voice, but it would be stern, and it would project confidence. The voice tone of someone greatly determines what kind of personality they are and whether or not they can be easily manipulated. Someone with a strong voice means that they have an active personality that is strong-willed and of strong character, while the opposite will be true for someone with a passive personality. However, to truly understand someone's body language, only focusing on one aspect is not enough. You must look into more than just one sign. So other than focusing on their tone of voice, you can also try to analyze someone through their walking style. Every person has a different walking style, and that style reflects their personality more than one realizes. Of course, there are always exceptions to these assumptions, but in the majority of the cases, a person with a strong walk has a strong personality, and that is another feature that will help you realize whether this is someone who can be easily coerced and persuaded or not. A strong walk is one where the person takes moderate and confident strides, with each step seeming to be meaningful, making it seem as though they have somewhere important to be. People with weak personalities either take short shuffled and aimless steps, showing a sense of constant confusion in their mind, or they will take extra long and fast strides, making it seem as though they are very rushed and in a hurry, implying an anxious mind. Besides the tone of voice and walking style, the words someone chooses to speak can quite possibly also help you read their body language. This is the most obvious form, and over time you can also grasp what words you should use to get someone to do what you want. Confident words show a confident personality, and the opposite would be true if the person using statements like "I guess" or "I don't know." This is because these words make it seem like the person does not have control over their life, and are always beating around the bush rather than just being straightforward and concise. Such people are more prone to being a victim to dark psychological tactics, as they simply let things happen to them, rather than try to take control. Another example can be that of a regional manager who in a meeting states, "I decided to get things done." The word decided shows that she did not just aimlessly make a decision, but rather put thought into it and knows how to take control of the situation. Similarly, the way a person behaves is also dependent on what their birth order is. There are 4 categories: oldest, youngest, middle, and only child. The oldest child will tend to form jealous rivalries when they start losing their parents' attention due to the younger one. This eventually causes them to develop a jealous and unconfident nature. The youngest competes for attention with the oldest, and always wants to get their way. The youngest child's personality is also that of a risk-taker most of the time because they feel like they can whatever it is that they want. The middle child tends to become very arrogant because even at home, they receive the least amount of attention, so they try to take it out in other ways. Only children are more sensitive to criticism, and they also develop attention-seeking habits. By knowing what the person's birth order is, you can easily work around their specific personality traits to get what you want out of them. Tuning into the frequency of body language in basic human psychology will tell you so much about a person. To accurately use dark psychological methods, it is very important to understand people's behaviors. Chapter 4. Dark Psychology, Women Behavior. Dark psychology is usually linked with the exploited behavior of people. These types of behavior are perceived very negatively. They often complete successfully for power and resources, and it highlights usually for men, but the samples of women with diversities can also not be neglected. The women's associative behavior that is very antisocial and the trade that hypnotizes and underestimates women's ability to receive and be evil is often taken in very fewer women exploit others. Yet all of our population don't expect a woman to be threatening. They are often taken very positively, softly, and non-threatening, and even if the women cause harm it is minimized, and women are very less responsible for the reactions, and also they are very less held responsible for the actions, and because of the reason women even have done because the behavior is so unexpected. This is the reason women think whatever they do, they can always gain sympathy in front of society, which is not necessary but somehow true. Not everybody knows this dark psychology horror. It would benefit the women, or if they are aware of the darker side of themselves, they are afraid of the headed monster, and they often don't like to talk about this complex topic where it is often said that women are the worst enemies of other women and themselves. It is very weird to listen to this and talk about it where it is one of the highest growth of society nowadays. Women's empowerment is stronger than any other era. People are more liberal and more vocal about women's empowerment. They talk about it more openly, and the topic of feminism is so wide and addressed and portrayed in such a beautiful way that everybody comes ahead to give their part and add. However, there is something inside every woman that reacts against their kind that goes against their own will. How it may not look wrong, however, the journey is not so easy, which is a lot of people say that it's a woman who breaks down another woman. Downgrading by life can be hard sometimes anywhere pulling each other back. We don't think of it often, and it is a very innocent reality that we are not aware of. It remains in their selves. Town selves personality is not only negative, but it is demeaning and is taken as negative because that is how we perceive, and we know it is a fact that we experience space at every stage of life, but we don't discuss that. We should not discuss because that is what women empowerment is all about. Human behavior should be controlled, and the darkest psychology of the women should also be understood and taken in charge as it is taken in charge of the men. With men, women can also be harmful when it comes to this as compared to men. Gossiping. There is no boundary set by dark psychology for the people. That's the same with the woman. The backbiting and the gossiping nature are the basic nature of the women. It has no boundaries, which are defined fun in doing so ever they don't care if anybody's sentiments are being hurt while they are being hurt, and women tend to talk so disgustingly about other women that they find it entertaining. However, it is very shameful because they don't understand how much attention seeking it is. It is often taken as a trait of women. However, they don't understand how attention seeking it is and how embarrassing it gets, which is no matter if people are enjoying this attention, but it still looks really bad. Gossiping might look fine, but can ruin another person's reputation because nobody is born a perfectionist, and nobody is born evil. They are good on the inside. However, if a person is spreading rumors about someone, it can ruin the reputation and affect them. Similarly, it can of the people themselves. It is right to be fully solved. They are being offended because which is if a person is gossiping, for example, if they are gossiping, and if they are confronted about their bad habit, they lose control. It does not mean that they stop doing it because it is not bound they won't do it that openly, but they would still do it is because they feel there is nothing wrong in it, and once they are pinpointed for it they would start to pull away from people instead of abandoning this habit of themselves. They are not that trustworthy to give out secrets to them, and they can also forget someone. When women are gossiping they don't know when to stop and what to say, and it can hurt someone genuinely, and it gives out negative energy from them, and that is one of the biggest things that women associated with the dark psychology give out so many negative vibes from them that is not our society is used to of looking at the home, and when they have them too, they always think that they would be that sweet child of people when they are not. Bad wording. Usually, females criticize others without giving it a thought, and that doesn't take charge of everything. A woman is working to make another woman let down, and they don't feel sorry for it. Older women are bringing down the younger ones do it to the old ones. It is an unhealthy practice overall. The funny thing is that whatever they say is so easily digestible to the people that they don't even ask them to shut up then and there. The most common practice of this is in every household between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relation, and even the value-educated people tend to do it, and the thing that is the part of human nature, but they don't understand that can lead to something very aggressive, and still, they don't stop or refrain themselves from doing so. Glaring. Women are born with the most beautiful eyes, and so are men. The woman is praised for the eyes throughout their life, but it is one of the most typical characteristics of women. They glare others to their soul and give out dirty looks to everybody around them, and it is an incoming threat in general. We often talk about bringing changes in women's empowerment forever. They can do anything that brings joy to them, and they would judge another woman by clearing at the measure, it would make them feel any better. But they do it so the other person can feel very uncomfortable, and they find betterment in doing so, and they would laugh out loud, later on thinking about it. This is a very belittled characteristic of every woman, however, they don't want to help the darker side of the personality, so as a result, they don't stop doing it. Insecure and jealous. Women are extremely unconfident as compared to men. The same thing arises when they are in fear of losing anyone that they are attached to or something that they want badly. They are very fragile, and in that situation, they suffer more emotional jealousy than any other, and it is found in any age of the women regardless of how old they are, and they can do anything for it. They don't want to lose someone they love no matter what happens with it is how women react to certain situations, and insecurity and jealousy are quite common in them. However, insecurity turns into an extreme obsession if it is not taken care of. Comparison and competition. It happens sometimes that people are very competitive. These are the words in the personality that bring out the best outcome in people, especially women. It gets negative when what they do is demoralize and destabilize and push each other down when there is a cold war among them. It just comes with a very competitive nature towards each other, and then compares them with other women irrespective of any relationship and friendship. This happens quite often, which is why we are living in a place where there is so much competition going on. Everything is going so digital, the competition becomes natural. However, there are two types of competition. Among competitions, there is one healthy competition and one unhealthy competition sometimes, and women are competing against each other. They don't look at the outcomes and what it is going to bring. That is why it brings out an unhealthy competition between them that brings out the worst in them. It is always necessary to hold the horses of the demons that are hidden and powerful working in the dark side. They are always competing, and they need to know that everything is temporary, and harming anybody while working to get something is not something great to do. Belittling. The darker side of every human being gives them the feeling that they are superior to others, and they have nothing to do in their life when that happens to them is that they start thinking that the world revolves around them. They try to belittle others because it is very easy to do so instead of showing gratitude to them, and they do anything to make others wrong, and when they are criticized, or when they are shown the reality, they won't do anything to make it better. Instead, they always put other people down and want to preserve the superiority of them over others, And they always want to have the high status in front of everybody, which is why what they think is necessary to do so to look better and everybody. Whereas they are just making a fool of themselves, which is quite toxic. Women cannot usually understand this behavior. People must admit and examine themselves, which is the above dark psychology, because it can disturb women's life and people around them, because not every woman is like this. But there are certainly some women whose darker side is more powerful as compared to the other side of their life. Every human being has a dark and light inside. It happens women approach towards is how they see towards different things. Similarly, when feminism has become the talk of the town, women should understand that there is a light side of feminism and the dark side of feminism, and there is so much more related to the community, especially when their traditional ideas on the concept of femininity. It targets woman to a particular way of living and a particular way of acting. However, some women do not agree to the feminism idea and its criteria, and they never oppose their beliefs, which are that living like a nice girl is not enough, and it may be a pleasant experience to see what it takes to take the whole of the darker side, but they need to understand that feminine energy is such a beautiful gift for women to experience by the substrates woman to be only the underside of themselves, and they are unaware of how the direct energy works, but they just keep on falling into a pit hole. Dark psychology not only has negative consequences, but surely, it is a little eviler in some situations, and it takes a lot of pain to warn people about the negative side regardless of their sex. However, when women are usually warned about the darker side, that is more defensive about themselves, and when boys and men are warned about the female nature and the darker side, it is known as misogynistic, which is highly debatable and an ignited topic at this time. The darker side of female nature is not only labeled as dangerous, but a lot of people, even though it is very powerful and evil, but it is not as quiet at it because they think that women are generally not meant to be evil, but the darker side is actually very destructive for themselves, and it is disrespectful in a lot of ways, and can cause damage that women can do in a lot of ways. It can cause a lot of emotional and physical damage. However, the emotional damage is not taken as real damage. No one can ignore this fact that women love attention. The word victim is often associated with the females, and the negative side is always said is a man who is programmed to be conquered and be violent and be more evil as compared to the women. However, women also come out as violent acts, and they are great manipulators, and they also have a darker psychology side of themselves, but they generally take advantage of the stereotype that presumes that they are very innocent. Generally, dark psychology consists of discussions about women's behavior. We can see the evil side is a little more controlling as compared to the positive side. However, there might be some positive aspects of the dark psychology that is concerned towards women where it is not as discussed as openly because we don't have much awareness about that. In the dark psychology brings out more negative aspects of certain things. Similarly goes with the woman characteristics, for everybody can overcome the dark psychology side by the right therapies, by examining themselves, and by knowing what is right for them, because there is nothing wrong in compromise into things. Chapter 5. Dark Psychology, Men Behavior. This is a big shock for the readers that dark psychology is real, and the majority of us are victim to it on a day-to-day basis without even realizing it. Dark psychology can be defined as the knowledge of manipulation and control over one's mind, to convince them to do whatever it is that you want them to do. The reason the word psychology is associated with this concept is that people use tactics of coercion and motivation of the mind to get whatever they want. Most of us might not want to hear it, but covert manipulation is often used by people you trust and people you love. For the women reading this, it is important to be able to relate the way males behave around you, to understand whether or not they are using dark psychology's tactics of manipulation, coercion, and persuasion on you. To get what they want, men very often manipulate women in multiple different ways. Compliments. They could flood you with love and affection to ensure you comply with their request out of love back. This means they will butter you up till you agree to whatever it is that they want you to do. They will make you feel like you might as well follow through with their request because they love you, and you love them back, even if you do not want to do whatever it is that they require. This could be something small as going to his new friend's house that you do not feel comfortable around, or even something more serious. People do not usually realize that giving out excessive love is a manipulation tactic. It does not necessarily always have to be for something negative and dangerous, but it is important to recognize all forms of influence to make sure we are not being made fools of. This tactic is known as love flooding by some professionals. Giving of gifts. The male counterpart will start flooding you with gifts for you to show some reciprocation. This is because when someone gives you a gift, it is human nature to feel obligated to do something back for them, not only as a form of a thank you, but also to compensate for them going out of their way. This is exactly why some people use this strategy to get their way. Love denial. As the name itself describes it, it is the opposite of love flooding. The male counterparts in your life will withhold their affection from you and stop giving you the loving attention till you feel the need to do whatever it is that they want just so that you can get some love and affection back out of them. Complete withdrawal. This is one of the most obvious forms of manipulation. Love flooding and love denial as manipulative tactics can still be sometimes not recognizable. However, the majority of people understand that when someone is avoiding you or is giving you the silent treatment, they are manipulating you by guilt-tripping you and making you feel bad and induce guilt. Men that you love do the same to get what they want out of you. Dark psychology recognizes this as one of the major strategies of manipulation. Lying. This is the not-so-obvious form of manipulation, as it is not that easy to recognize when you are or are not being lied to, until and unless you are aware of all the pre-existing facts of the matter. The males will straight-up lie to trick you into doing something for them, and because you will not know the reality of the situation, you will be persuaded into doing it. There are other forms of speech that are also included in this form of manipulation. Besides lying, they can exaggerate a story out of context, or maybe even not lie completely but tell you a partial truth. That means they will choose to ignore or not mention important parts of the story or situation while narrating it. These will be those parts that would make you not want to do something for them, and ignoring those parts will mean that they unjustifiably coerced you. It is not much you can do to prevent this sort of manipulation unless, of course, you go out of your way to make sure your male counterpart is being honest with you. However, usually due to the existence of love and trust, women do not do so. Semantic manipulation. Though this is not exactly lying, it is somewhat a passive form of it. What this strategy means is that the male will talk to you in words that have a double meaning. That means they will use words that are assumed to have a mutual definition, and so at the end of the conversation, you will be thinking something else and agreeing to it, while the male will have meant something different. However, later on, you will not be able to back out of your words because you would have given your commitment, and out of guilt of hurting the other person, you will have been manipulated into doing whatever it is that the man would have wanted you to do. Reverse psychology. It is human nature to want to do something you are told not to do. We see it in parent-child relationships as well. Similarly, to get what they want out of you, men will manipulate you by making you feel like you cannot do something. This will directly affect your ego and damage your self-esteem, and to restore it, you will want to prove them wrong. This will make you fall into their manipulative trap, and you will end up doing exactly what they wanted in the first place, even though they made you feel like it is something you are incapable of doing. For example, you meet a guy, and the guy shows interest in you, but you do not have any interest back. For you to be into them, they will say something in such a way that you will want to prove them wrong. This is a tactic to get you to spend more time with them, giving them more leverage into finding ways to ensure you hold your interest. This is also the tactic used when a man plays hard to get. They will make you take an interest in them by acting as though they are unachievable. This is the most communal policy used by men to make you take notice of them and desire. Restriction of choices. This is the last of the tactics or strategies or behaviors used and enacted by men to persuade and convince you to do whatever it is that they want you to do. It can be used in two ways, either to make you choose a choice they want you to make, or to make you avoid a choice that they do not want you to take. For the first way, what they will do is they will ask you to do something, and if you do not wish to do it, they will give you more options. However, they will be worse for you than the one you rejected in the first place. Although in reality, you can simply ignore all choices and not do any of them, the male counterparts will make you feel like you have to make a choice. So, you will, in the end, go for the initial option given that they wanted you to do, as it will seem to be the least bad one. Now for the latter way, what they will do is that they will give you certain choices in such a way that you will be distracted from the initial decision or thing that you wanted to do. This strategy of manipulation can be separated into a class of its own known as distractive measures. However, it is still a subcategory of choice restriction. Mind games. As Google defines it, mind games are psychologically manipulative behavior intended to gain the advantage over one another. It is used when there is a struggle between two people for one-upmanship, which is when one wants to feel more superior to the other. People carry forward mind games to manipulate the one they want to make inferior, so they either say stuff they do not mean, or even go to extremes such as embarrassing their counterpart socially. For example, sometimes husbands will taunt and demean their wives in public gatherings only so that she loses her self-esteem and becomes someone who is more easily coerced back home. Besides using manipulative tactics to coerce women in their life, men behave in ways and use different tactics of psychology elsewhere as well. The most prominent of these is in politics. It is no lie that the majority of the politicians of the world are male. Extensive research was done in the male-to-female ratio of politicians and state leaders, and as of December 2018, it was found that the participation of females in national-level parliaments at a global level was only 24.1%. And that includes the statistics of all those in developed nations. Developing nations have an almost negligible amount of women participation in politics. The male politicians in such nations use dark psychological tactics of manipulation on the people they are supposed to lead. They use persuasion tactics to convince the nation that they are the ones they should vote for by heightening the people's emotional state. Fascists specifically use these tactics by irrationally inflating the concept of patriotism. This is seen throughout history and even in current world affairs as well. For example, Adolf Hitler during Nazi times, and Narendra Modi in India, and Kim Jong-un in North Korea now. Not only this, but to maintain the status quo, these men also convince the nation into believing that female politicians are not fit for this kind of job, as they are overly emotional, rash, and incapable. Chapter 6. Persuasion, Dark Persuasion and its Tactics. When you consider persuasion, what is it that comes to mind? A few people may consider developing messages that ask watchers to purchase a specific item. In contrast, others may think about a political applicant attempting to persuasion voters to pick their names on the voting booth. Persuasion is a groundbreaking power in everyday life and impacts society in an entirety. Political issues, right choices, broad communications, news, and advertising are affected by the intensity of persuasion and impact us. During some circumstances, we like to accept that we are indifferent to persuasion. That we have an inherent capacity to see through the attempt to sell something, understand reality in a situation, and arrive at resolutions entirely. This may be valid in certain conditions. Yet persuasion isn't only a pushy sales rep attempting to sell you a vehicle, or a TV ad luring you to purchase the best-in-the-class item. Persuasion can be reserved, and how we react to such impacts can rely upon a variety of components. When we consider persuasion, Negative models are frequently the first to come in mind, yet persuasion can likewise be utilized as a positive power. Public help campaigns that urge individuals to reuse or stop smoking are extraordinary examples of persuasion used to improve individuals' lives. What is persuasion? So what precisely is persuasion? In the dynamics of persuasion, Perloff characterizes persuasion can be described as a typical procedure in which communicators attempt to persuade others to change their mentalities or practices concerning an issue through the transmission of a message in an environment of free choice. The critical components of this meaning of persuasion are that persuasion is representative, using words, pictures, sounds, and so forth. It includes a purposeful effort to impact others. Self-persuasion is vital. Individuals are not forced, they are instead allowed to pick. Strategies for transmitting convincing messages can happen in a variety of ways, including speaking person to person and non-verbally using TV, radio, internet, or up-close and personal correspondence. Dark persuasion. Dark persuasion lacks any motive. It is different from positive persuasion. This is characterized as the opposite if positive belief is hurting people without cause. Sometimes dark persuader thinks that he is wise and he should attempt such an act. The motivations of their actions depend upon the personality type. If they are from type B, they can be destructive. Dark persuasion has lethal outcomes. The person will take control of the other individual and influence them to commit wrong. And if someone goes against them, they can turn into evil and can victimize the individual. In many cases, victims lose their lives. Dark persuasion tactics. How do persuaders fulfill their wishes? That depends on the method of persuasion. The long con is one of them. In this type, the persuader takes time to gain the trust of the victim. They will be friends first. After knowing the fact that the victim trusts them, they start to attempt their evil persuasion in them. This leads to making choices probably wrong by which the only persuader is getting the benefit. Chapter 7. How to recognize mind control techniques. Have the proper business ideas? Attempting to induce individuals to come back to your event or party, however, nobody is RSVPing. Or, does one surprise a way to forestall you from obtaining scammed by salespeople? This journal post summarizes material from Henry Martin Robert Cialdini's Influence, the scientific discipline of persuasion and general psychological phenomena. Offer and you shall receive. Thank you, Costco, for being impressive. However conjointly sneaky. Reciprocity may be real stuff, and it very works. Costco is ill-famed for his or her you get a free sample, you're feeling a way of obligation to come to the favor by shopping for a product. Researchers within the famed Coca-Cola experiment showed that reciprocity would work while not the recipient accepted the gift. Participants were told to judge art and buy a self-selected range of raffle tickets. Participants' UN agency were provided a free Coca-Cola liquid bought doubly the quantity if they reduced the offer of the beverage. A door within the face and foot within the door. A door within the face. First, enkindle an enormous demand. Then, raise the request you had originally wished. This technique is especially effective as a result of it makes the opposite person feel unhealthy for rejecting your first request. This can be the technique that Calvin is exploitation within the Calvin and Thomas Hobbes comic on top of. Foot within the door. Variety of the alternative of door within the face technique. This technique involves soliciting for a little favor first, then increasing the favor. For instance, rise if your friend can allow you to borrow their automotive for every day. Once they agree, raise if they wouldn't mind disposal it to you for a few additional days too. This technique is effective as a result of individuals who don't like breaking commitments. Lowballing. This is the ill-famed technique utilized by most automotive salespeople. You and also the employee agree on a deal for $495. On the other hand, as you land up the payment method, there are some additional fees and supplemental costs. Therefore the total will increase to $1,000. You falter for a second. The employee disbelievingly inquires, "But, are you about to modification your mind on this deal we tend to had, afraid regarding breaking your commitment?" You are saying, "Of course not," and pay money for the automotive. This maneuver is effective as a result of it causes you to want your ending a deal that has already been created, albeit the employee is surreptitiously sterilization the arrangement. Social proof. If others do it, it should be right. The ability of social proof creates long lines for no reason, likewise as additional sinister situations, just like the watcher impact. In general, if one thing seems as if it's already well liked, it'll still become additional cogent. Social proof is a very common force within the business world. Tip jars seldom get further cash if there's no cash within the jar already. A typical trick? Place a number of your cash within the tip jar before you interact with customers. Or consider the video below, at a music competition wherever one man gets an entire crowd to bop. Likability. This one is maybe the foremost obvious. If individuals such as you, they'll do things for you. A number of the foremost common ways that to become additionally likable. Being engaging. Being just like your audience. Giving compliments. Frequent contact. Note that within the on top of the image, it's not entirely clear that one is additionally likable. Whereas Zac Efron on the left is the additional engaging, Seth Rogen is extremely relatable and sure additional just like the viewer, as opposition the god-like body of Zac Efron. Authority. In the famed Milgram experiment, participants, the teacher, administered electrical shocks to a different person, the student. UN agency was performing arts a word try to exercise. The electrical shocks were pretended, and also the student was in on the experiment, dissembling that the electrical shocks were inflicting him pain. The associate experimenter v. the authority within the space with the teacher. Whenever the teacher would be unsure regarding administering further electrical shocks, the experimenter, sporting a laboratory coat, would urge the teacher to continue. The results were shocking, the overwhelming majority of participants continuing to administer electrical shocks to levels of fatality, once prompted by the lab-coated experimenter. The Milgram experiment is proof of the ability of authority. In general, having the associate authority of any kind will very persuade individuals. Simply take a glance at the lucky strike ad below. Even though doctors say the cigarettes are less irritating, it doesn't mean they're any higher for your lungs. Scarcity. Making things appear additional scarce makes them additional fascinating. Individuals believe that they need a singular chance to induce one thing, and that they don't need to miss out. This technique is extraordinarily common within the marketplace world, whether you're exploiting these techniques for your profit, to push an organization, or to set up events. Keep in mind to be respectful of individuals, and to not brainwash or exploit. I in person study these ways largely as a method of protection, to avoid being cornered in one amongst these mind control methods. Consider Influence by Henry Martin Robert Cialdini for an additional in-depth understanding of those techniques and the way they work. Chapter 8. Learn persuasion through manipulation techniques. Persuasion may be a technique that you just use on a commonplace, however persuasive area unit you obtain what you're seeking once trying to steer others? If not, it's time to begin functioning on your ability to steer. It's typically thought that persuasion, and therefore the techniques that make up it, is barely used for selfish reasons. However, this can be not true. Being smart at persuasion is required to induce a head at work, kind friendships, and even once interacting with strangers. Persuasion may be a talent and one that you just will develop with the correct tips and knowledge. This book is the beginning of taking the mandatory action to enhance your persuasion skills. It starts with the fundamentals of persuasion and permits you to assess, however affected you presently area unit. From there, you may get many unjust tips to boost your ability to steer others. Study techniques and the way to use manipulation techniques to your advantage. The mental state is next. This can be a fascinating talent to own as a result of it's not a standard one. It's one thing which will aid you in obtaining a lot of what you would like from individuals in your life. This can be a talent you would like to amass to assist with a lot of advanced persuasion skills. This can be followed by learning concerning deception and what you'll be able to do to enhance your skills and utilize this persuasion technique to your advantage. Mind games and mind management area unit consecutive skills you may study. You may be shocked concerning, however, these area units are utilized in daily life. You possibly fall victim to them quite frequently in ways that you're not even awake to. Brainwashing somebody or exploitation. Powerful persuasion isn't straightforward. It consists of closing the topic far from the globe mentally, socially, and physically. In alternative words, utterly uninflected the individual. With less data, the topic won't have as several choices to decide on from. Their essential thinking also will be restricted. Usually, that somebody could be a reasonable leader. In Observe, it suggests that satisfying someone's primary and secondary desires until there's a complete dependency. Psychophysical enervation. Some varieties of physical enervation area units are related to psychological debilitation. Individuals use it to draw individuals in and grab their attention. Cognitive techniques. These varieties of techniques drawn from the two we tend to already mentioned. Denigration of essential thinking. The culprit shows the individual the illogicality of following their thoughts. Thus, when they assume one thing, they find yourself inhibitory. Use of deceit and lies. Distorting reality by activity data, lying, or deceiving. As a result, people lose their temperament and war the group's identity. This may build people to lose any characteristics. Omitting bound words or phrases is a way of avoiding explicit queries or analysis. Changing the supply of authority. Once you level a person's principles of authority, you expose them to a totalitarian authority. Consequently, this authority gains all the ability. Everybody else has got to submit. There is a unit solely to suggests that by that men will cope with one another, guns or logic. Force or persuasion. People who understand that they cannot win by suggesting that of logic, have forever resorted to guns. A guy cornered in an exceeding hole by powerful persuasion. These states of consciousness can jointly build followers a lot of vulnerable. As a result, it's easier to manage them by limiting their choices and reducing their ability to judge them. Psychological features and emotional persuasion amendment the approach they assume and feel. Social influence isn't essentially negative. Social influence is mostly looked as if it would be harmless once it respects the proper of the influence to simply accept or reject it, and isn't unduly powerful. Counting on the context and motivations, social influence could represent dishonest administration. Negative brace. Involves removing one from a negative state of affairs as an award. Example, you will not have to be compelled to do your prep if you permit Pine Tree State to try and do this to you. The partial or intermittent positive brace will encourage the victim to persist. For instance, in most varieties of action, the bookmaker is probably going to win currently and once more, however, still lose cash overall. According to Simon known the subsequent artful techniques. Lying by commission. It's exhausting to inform if someone is lying at the time they are doing it, though typically the reality could also be apparent later once it's too late. A technique to constrict the possibilities of being a song is to know that some attitude sorts, particularly psychopaths, square measure specialists at the art of lying and cheating, doing it ofttimes and sometimes in delicate ways that selective basic cognitive process or selective attention. Manipulator refuses to listen to something which will divert from their agenda, spoken language things like I don't need to listen to it. Evasion. Just like a diversion, however, giving extraneous, rambling, imprecise responses, most lined mammal words. Guilt trip. A special, reasonably coercion maneuver. Shaming techniques are often terribly delicate, like a fierce look, an unpleasant tone of voice, rhetorical comments, and delicate satire. Manipulators will build one feel guilty for even daring to challenge them. It's good thanks to foster a way of inadequacy within the victim. Vilifying the victim. Quite the other, this maneuver could be a powerful means that of golf stroke the victim on the defensive, whereas at the same time masking the aggressive intent of the manipulator. Whereas the manipulator incorrectly accuses the victim as being an associate in nursing maltreater in response once the victim stands up for or defends themselves or their position. Playing the victim role. A manipulator portrays themselves as a victim of circumstance or somebody else's behavior to achieve pity, sympathy, or evoke compassion and thereby get one thing from another. Caring and conscientious individuals cannot stand to examine anyone's suffering, and also the manipulator typically finds it straightforward to play on sympathy to induce cooperation. Playing the servant role. Cloaking a self-seeking agenda within the pretense of a service to a lot of noble cause, spoken language they're acting in a very sure thanks to being obedient to or in service to a force, or just doing their job. Seduction. Manipulator uses charm, praise, admiration, or overtly supporting others to induce them to lower their defenses, and provides their trust and loyalty to the manipulator. They're going to additionally provide facilities with the intent to achieve trust associate in nursing access to an innocent victim they need to be captivated. Projecting the blame. Manipulator incriminates in typically delicate, hard-to-detect ways that often, the manipulator can project their thinking onto the victim, creating the victim appear as if they need to do one thing wrong. Manipulators also will claim that the victim is that the One World Health Organization is guilty for basic intellectual process lies, that they were conned into the basic cognitive process, as if the victim forced the manipulator to be deceptive. All blame, apart from the half that's utilized by the manipulator to simply accept false guilt, is completed to create the victim feel guilty concerning creating healthy decisions, correct thinking, and smart behaviors. It's oftentimes used as a method of psychological and emotional manipulation and management. Manipulators lays lying solely to remanipulate the initial, less conceivable story into a more acceptable truth that the victim can believe. Outstanding lies as being the reality is another common methodology of management and manipulation. Manipulators like to incorrectly accuse the victim as deserving to be treated that means. They typically claim that the victim is crazy and or abusive, particularly once there's proof against the manipulator. Manipulators could be placed on a glance of surprise or outrage. This maneuver makes the victim question their judgment and probably their mental health. Generally, manipulators can have used cohorts before to assist duplicate their stories. The manipulator isn't truly angry, and they simply placed on associate in the nursing act. They simply need what they need and obtain angry once denied. The victim becomes a lot of centered on the anger rather than the manipulation maneuver. These embrace phrases like many individuals such as you. Or everyone will this anyways. Susceptibility exploited by manipulators according to Breaker's Assist book, manipulators exploit the subsequent vulnerabilities which will exist in victims. The disease to please addiction to earning the approval and acceptance of others, emetophobia, fear of negative emotion, i.e., the concern of expressing anger, frustration, or disapproval, lack of positiveness and skill to mention no blurry sense of identity, with soft personal boundaries, low self-sufficient external locus of management. According to Simon, manipulators accomplishment the subsequent vulnerabilities which will exist in victims. Overconscientiousness. The victim is simply too willing to convey manipulator the good thing about the doubt and see their aspect of things during which they blame the victim. Naive, cannot believe their square measure. Dishonest individuals within the world or takes it without any consideration that if their square measure any, they're going to not be allowed to go after others. Impressionable. Too seduced by charmers. For instance, they may vote for the ostensibly charming politician. World Health Organization kisses babies. Trusting. Those who square measure honest typically assume that everybody else is honest. They're a lot of doubtless to commit themselves to individuals they hardly grasp on faith credentials, etc., and fewer doubtless to question supposed specialists. Carelessness. Not giving a sufficient quantity of thought or attention to hurt or errors. Lonely. Lonely individuals could settle for any provision of human contact. A psychopathological trespasser could provide a human-friendly relationship for a value. Narcissistic. Narcissists square measure vulnerable to falling for the unmerited compliment. Altruistic. The alternative of psychopathic, too honest, too fair, too sympathetic. Frugal. Cannot say no to a cut price, notwithstanding they grasp the explanation. It's therefore low in cost. Greedy. The greedy associate in nursing. Dishonest could fall prey to a psychoneurotic World Health Organization that will simply lure them into acting in an immoral means. Masochistic. Lack dignity and then unconsciously let psychopaths benefit from them. They assume they merit it out of a way of guilt. The old will become worn out and fewer capable of multitasking. Once hearing a sales talk, they're less doubtless to contemplate that it may be a con. They're vulnerable to giving cash to somebody with a hard luck story. See elder abuse. Motivations of manipulators. Manipulators will have numerous doable motivations, as well as however not restricted to. They need to advance their functions and private gain at nearly any price to others. A strong got to attain feelings of power and superiority in relationships with others. A need and wish to feel up to the mark. A wish to achieve a sense of power over others to lift their perception of shallowness. Boredom or growing uninterested in their surroundings, seeing it as a game quite pain others. Covert agenda, criminal or otherwise, as well as monetary manipulation, often seen once the old or unsuspecting, unprotected flush square measure deliberately targeted for the only real purpose of getting a victim's monetary assets, not distinctive with underlying emotions, commitment-phobic disorder, and later rationalization. Offender doesn't manipulate consciously, however rather tries to convert themselves of the illogicality of their own emotions. Lack of self-management over impulsive and antisocial behavior, so preemptive or reactionary manipulation to take care of image. Main article. A psychological state within the geographical point. One approach to management normally identifies a really fine, nearly non-existent line between management and manipulation. The geographical point psychoneurotic could typically apace shift between emotions, accustomed to manipulate individuals or to cause high anxiety. Manipulation, the psychoneurotic can produce a situation of psychopathic fiction wherever positive data concerning themselves and negative misinformation concerning others are created, wherever one's role as a region of a network of pawns or patrons are used, and one is trimmed into acceptive the psychopath's agenda. Different shared traits could embrace pathological self-love, consistent irresponsibleness, autocracy, lack of sympathy, cruelty, meanness, impulsivity, a disposition to self-harm and addictions, social exploitation, hostility, anger and rage, vanity, emotional instability, rejection sensitivity, disposition, and also the use of primitive defense mechanisms that square measure pathological and self-loving. In line with her, these behaviors typically seem as unthinking manifestations of intense pain, and square measure typically not deliberate on be thought about artful. Manipulative behavior is intrinsic to narcissists. The World Health Organization uses manipulation to get power and self-loving provider. Chapter 9. Dark Triad Personalities. Managing dark personality traits. Many people have complex personality traits and therefore they are very difficult to handle. They might have violent and aggressive behaviors, but in a certain way, you can alter their behaviors. You can see the harmony and care in their personality as well. You can manage their behaviors with great management and skills. Besides, some behaviors are very toxic and dangerous that you cannot manage them. These people can undermine their colleagues in a bad way. You cannot alter those behaviors in any way. Such people tend to damage all the teams. Psychologists have identified and proposed 3 traits that make up the sinister-sounding dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. We are going to see what these 3 traits are, and how they can affect the workplace. What is the dark triad? The dark triad is a much unknown word to most of the people because it is one of the buzzwords. This word is known in the world of psychology. People are narcissistic who are selfish, boastful, arrogant, lacking in empathy, and hypersensitive to criticism. The word derives from the renowned Italian politician and diplomat Niccolò Machiavelli of the 16th century. The major traits that associate with Machiavellianism are duplicity, manipulation, self-interest, and a lack of both emotion and morality. Psychopathy. Psychopathy refers to the traits including lack of empathy or remorse, antisocial behavior, and being manipulative and volatile. There is a distinction between a psychopath and psychopathic traits. How to identify dark triad traits? Dark triad traits were traditionally identified by psychologists after checking different traits one by one. Jonasson and Webster's made people rate themselves according to the following questions. I have used deceit or lied to get my way. I tend to manipulate others to get my way. I have used flattery to get my way. I tend to exploit others towards my end. I tend to not be too concerned with morality. I tend to lack remorse. I tend to be callous or insensitive. I tend to be cynical. I tend to want others to admire me. I tend to want others to pay attention to me. I tend to seek prestige or status. I tend to expect special favors from others. If a person has rated a higher score, then it means that he or she has higher dark triad traits. How to manage people with dark triad traits. If you find out someone likely to have dark triad traits, then what to do? This is one of the multifaceted areas, and there are no easy answers. Experienced psychologists argued that behavior changes day to day, and thus gradation of personality types also changes. In other scenarios, as a manager, you will need to address negative behaviors to maintain harmony and productivity within your team. Coping with anger. A person with psychopathic traits is likely to be more prone to anger and aggression. The usual signs of anger are easy to figure out, for example, a raised voice. There are also other ways of showing anger, such as ignoring people. In this way, passive aggression occurs that is difficult to figure out and manage. There are some strategies you can use when dealing with angry people. It is very necessary to make you secure first in front of an aggressive person. After some time you need to try to identify the cause of his rage with questioning techniques and active listening. Dealing with bullying. There are occasions when anger comes out in the form of bullying. At an initial and simple level, it can be verbal abuse, but gradually it becomes more threatening. Such persons start belittling others and spread unrealistic rumors. Spotting manipulators. You need to go with a variety of options to impress others at your workplace. There are a lot of ways through which you can influence others. One way is to praise and encourage others at your workplace. Manipulative people are good when it comes to hiding their actions or behavior, but there are signs you can look out. Those signs include someone who won't take an answer, who always excuses for hurtful behavior, or presents multi-faces to different people to fulfill the purposes. If you challenge a manipulative person, then you need to have proof that how he is damaging your team. Coping with narcissism. The selfishness of narcissists can be a big headache because it can disturb the morale and ambience of a workplace. People might not realize that they are affecting and damaging the whole team, but you need to raise your voice against their actions. Narcissists said to have a big ego and do whatever they can to grab the spotlight. People who are having big egos don't expect to be challenged, therefore you need to stand on the ground and meet their claims or demands with solid counter-arguments. It can also be useful to put them in a situation where they are dependent on colleagues' cooperation. This can increase respect and understanding. Building the skills you need to cope. It is very difficult to manage negative behaviors if you do not tend to manage them. If you don't have confidence when it comes to dealing with conflicts, then you can face many difficulties in dealing with different types of people. Your emotions can be managed in a better way when it comes to utilizing these skills, and having a greater understanding of other people can help you spot patterns of unwanted behavior before they become a threat to your team. The impact of dark triad traits at work. It's difficult to find anything positive in the impacts of dark triad traits at the workplace. A paper, The Dark Side of Personality at Work, presented by Dr. Seth Spain, assistant professor at Binghamton University School of Management in New York, 2013, said there was evidence of a fairly robust relationship between unethical decision-making and Machiavellianism when it comes to organizations. Research by Delroy Polhus and Kevin Williams, psychologists at the University of British Columbia, argue that tendencies associated with narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy are separate entities, but they tend to overlap. However, there is some evidence that initially narcissism can come across in relatively positive and desirable ways. An effort can be carried out by a narcissist with his/her appearance and seem to be charming and friendly, but constant self-obsession take away all the charm in just seconds. Guarding against the subtle influence of dark triad individuals. In his book Office Politics, in 2013, How to Thrive in a World of Lying, Dirty Tricks and Backstabbing, declared by psychologist Oliver James, when it comes to a workplace in terms of career and progression, dark triad tendencies can give someone a nefarious advantage. People with having dark triad tendencies can help people bully or manipulate their way to the top of an organization. Psychopathic people tend to focus on achievement without being too concerned at the effect their ambition might have on others, and Machiavellians can be very adept at portraying themselves in a good light. Clive Boddy, professor of leadership and organization behavior at Middlesex University in the UK, contends that dark triad traits can lead to the creation of corporate psychopaths with a diminished sense of corporate or collective responsibility. He argues such personality types are often more prevalent within sectors such as financial services and the civil service. Managers at all levels need to keep an eye out for dark triad behaviors, guard against them, and deal with them vigorously. Where appropriate, this may involve removing people showing these behaviors from the organization. The end.